Have you ever looked at your property tax bill and wondered how it became one of the largest expenses in your retirement? Think about it for a moment. You spend decades working, you make mortgage payments year after year, you maintain your property, you repair the roof when it leaks, you replace the water heater when it fails, you mow the lawn, paint the walls, and invest thousands of dollars into a home you hope will eventually be yours free and clear. Then one day you finally pay off the mortgage. You expect a feeling of freedom. You expect relief. You expect that after all those years of payments, the financial burden of homeownership will finally become manageable. But then another property tax bill arrives, and another, and another. In many cases, those bills continue increasing long after the mortgage is gone. For millions of seniors across America, property taxes have quietly become one of the biggest threats to retirement security. Some retirees are paying thousands of dollars every year just to continue living in homes they already own. Others have watched their tax bills double over the past decade, even though their income barely changed. And here's the part that surprises most people. Many of those homeowners may qualify for programs that could reduce those costs significantly. Yet they never receive the savings. Not because they don't qualify, not because they did something wrong, not because the government denied them, but because nobody told them the programs existed in the first place. Today we're going to talk about 5 forms and 5 property tax relief programs that many seniors never hear about until it's too late. These programs have different names depending on where you live. Some states call them exemptions. Others call them credits. Others use terms like freezes, deferrals, abatements, or relief programs. But the basic purpose is the same: to help eligible homeowners reduce the financial burden of property taxes. And before we get into the first form, there's something extremely important you need to understand. Property tax systems are not designed to automatically search for every benefit you qualify for. Most people assume that if they're eligible for a tax break, the government will simply apply it automatically. Unfortunately, that's usually not how it works. In many jurisdictions, you must actively apply. You must fill out paperwork. You must provide documentation, and you must submit everything before specific deadlines. If you never file the paperwork, the savings often never appear. Think about how strange that is. Imagine a senior homeowner qualifies for a program that could save $1,500 per year. If nobody tells them about the program, they continue paying full taxes. 1 year passes, then another, then another. 10 years later, they may have paid $15,000 more than necessary, not because they were ineligible, not because the law prevented them from receiving relief, simply because they never submitted a form. That's why understanding these programs can be so important. Now, before we continue, let's discuss something many property tax professionals have observed over the years. Most seniors don't start researching property tax relief until they feel financial pressure. Maybe inflation increased grocery costs. Maybe healthcare expenses started rising. Maybe insurance premiums jumped dramatically. Maybe retirement savings aren't stretching as far as expected. That's often when people begin looking closely at their property taxes. And that's when they discover there were programs available all along. The reality is that the earlier you learn about these options, the better. Because some benefits only apply after you file. Some don't provide retroactive savings, and some have annual deadlines that must be met. Missing those deadlines can mean waiting another year. So let's start with the first and most important form on the list, the Homestead Exemption. If property tax relief were a house, the Homestead Exemption would be the foundation. It's often the first program homeowners should investigate because many other benefits build on top of it. Now, what exactly is a Homestead Exemption? In simple terms, it reduces the taxable value of your primary residence. Notice something important. The tax rate itself may stay exactly the same. Instead, the government reduces the portion of your home's value that gets taxed. Let's look at a simple example. Suppose your home is assessed at $300,000. Without any exemption, taxes may be calculated using the full assessed value. But if your local homestead exemption reduces taxable value by $50,000, the government may calculate taxes based on only $250,000 instead. That difference can translate into meaningful savings year after year. For some homeowners, the reduction may be modest. For others, it can be substantial. The exact amount depends entirely on local laws. But here's where things become interesting. Many people assume they're already receiving this exemption, and sometimes they're right, but many times they're wrong. One of the most common mistakes occurs after moving. A homeowner sells one property and purchases another. They previously had a homestead exemption. They assume the benefit automatically follows them to the new property. In many areas, that's not the case. A new application may be required. Another common mistake happens when homeowners inherit property. They move into the home and assume everything remains unchanged. Again, local rules may require new filings. And then there are homeowners who simply never applied. They purchased their homes years ago and nobody ever explained the program. As a result, they continue paying taxes based on the full assessment. Imagine discovering after 10 years that you could have been receiving a reduction all along. That situation happens more often than most people realize. Now let's move to form number 2, the senior exemption, sometimes called the age 65 exemption. This is where property tax relief becomes even more relevant for retirees. Governments understand something very important. Retirement often changes a person's financial situation. While some retirees have pensions, investments, or substantial savings, many rely heavily on fixed income sources. Meanwhile, property values continue rising. Local governments continue adjusting assessments, and tax bills continue increasing. The result can create serious financial strain. To address this issue, many jurisdictions created additional exemptions specifically for older homeowners. The age requirement varies. In many places, it's 65. In others, it may be 62, 60, 67, or another qualifying age. Some programs require only age. Others include income limitations, and that's where many homeowners become confused. A neighbor may tell them about a senior exemption. They assume they automatically qualify. Then they discover their county has different requirements. Or the opposite happens. Someone assumes they don't qualify and never bothers checking. Later, they discover they actually did qualify all along. That's why assumptions can be expensive. Verification is everything. Many senior exemptions require proof of age. Some require proof of residency. Others require income documentation. And once again, many programs require a formal application. No application often means no benefit. Now here's something most people don't think about. Let's say someone becomes eligible at age 65, but they don't learn about the exemption until age 72. That's 7 years of missed opportunities, 7 years of potentially higher tax bills, 7 years of retirement income that could have remained in their pocket. This is why awareness matters, because knowledge alone doesn't reduce taxes. Action does. And that's exactly what many eligible homeowners never take. Now let's discuss form number 3. This may be the most powerful program we've covered so far, the assessment freeze. When homeowners first hear the word freeze, many assume it means property taxes completely stop. That's not usually what happens. Instead, an assessment freeze generally limits increases in a property's assessed value. To understand why that's important, you need to understand what often drives higher property taxes. It's not always the tax rate. Many times it's the assessment. Imagine you purchased a home 20 years ago. At the time, the neighborhood was relatively affordable. Over the next 2 decades, new businesses arrive. Roads improve, schools improve, demand increases, property values climb dramatically. Suddenly, homes that once sold for $150,000 are selling for $450,000. That's great news if you're planning to sell, but it's not always great news if you're retired and staying put, because rising market values often lead to rising assessments, and rising assessments frequently lead to larger property tax bills. The assessment freeze was created to address exactly this problem. For qualifying homeowners, it can limit how quickly taxable assessments grow. This can create significant long-term savings, and that's why many tax professionals consider it one of the most valuable benefits available to seniors. A standard exemption may reduce taxes today. An assessment freeze can help protect you from future increases for years to come. In rapidly appreciating areas, that difference can become enormous. Imagine 2 neighbors living in identical homes. One qualifies for an assessment freeze, the other doesn't. Over the next decade, local property values surge. The homeowner with the freeze may experience dramatically slower assessment growth. Meanwhile, the other homeowner sees taxable value increase year after year. Eventually, the difference in tax bills can become substantial. Unfortunately, many eligible seniors never apply. Some don't know the program exists. Others assume they're already receiving it. And some mistakenly believe a homestead exemption automatically includes an assessment freeze. Often it does not. They're separate benefits with separate requirements. And because they're separate, failing to apply for one can mean missing thousands of dollars in potential savings over time. But here's where things become even more interesting, because the next form we're going to discuss doesn't focus primarily on property value at all. Instead, it focuses on something many retirees care about far more: income. And in some situations, this next program can provide relief specifically because property taxes consume too much of a homeowner's available income. That's where form number 4 enters the picture: the Circuit Breaker Program. And what many seniors don't realize about this program may be even more surprising than everything we've discussed so far. Now, let's continue with form number 4, the Circuit Breaker Program. Of all the property tax relief programs available to seniors, this may be one of the least understood. Ironically, it can also be one of the most valuable. Most homeowners are familiar with the concept of exemptions. They understand the basic idea of reducing taxable value. But a circuit breaker program works differently. The name itself comes from the electrical device found in homes. When too much electricity flows through a system, the circuit breaker trips to prevent damage. Property tax circuit breakers operate under a similar principle. The idea is simple. If property taxes become too large compared to a homeowner's income, the program may provide relief. In other words, instead of focusing primarily on the value of the home, the program looks at the homeowner's ability to afford the tax burden. That's an important distinction, because many retirees face a very specific problem. They may own a valuable home. Perhaps they purchased it decades ago when prices were much lower. Over time, the neighborhood improved. Property values increased dramatically. Today, the home may be worth several times what they originally paid. On paper, they appear wealthy, but their monthly income may tell a completely different story. Maybe they're living primarily on Social Security. Maybe they have a modest pension. Maybe retirement savings aren't generating as much income as expected. The result is a situation where someone can be property rich but cash poor. And that's exactly the situation many circuit breaker programs were designed to address. In some jurisdictions, qualifying homeowners receive a tax credit. In others, they may receive a refund. Some programs reduce the overall burden directly. Others provide relief through state income tax systems. The details vary widely, but the underlying goal remains the same: prevent property taxes from consuming an unreasonable share of a person's income. Now here's why so many people overlook this benefit. Most homeowners assume property tax relief is based entirely on age or home value. They never realize income-based programs may also exist. As a result, they focus only on exemptions while completely ignoring credits. That mistake can be costly, because in certain situations, a circuit breaker program may provide larger benefits than a standard exemption, especially for retirees living on limited incomes. Another issue is complexity. These programs often require additional documentation. Income verification may be necessary. Tax returns may need to be reviewed. Supporting records may be required. For some seniors, the paperwork feels intimidating, so they postpone applying, then they postpone again. And before long, another year has passed. If there's one lesson to remember here, it's this: never assume you're ineligible simply because a program sounds complicated. Complex applications often exist because the potential savings are significant. Now let's move to form number 5, the Property Tax Deferral Program. This is perhaps the most misunderstood item on our entire list, because many homeowners hear about tax deferrals and immediately assume they're tax reductions. That's not exactly correct. A deferral is different. An exemption reduces taxes. A credit reduces taxes. A freeze limits increases. A deferral postpones payment. Think about that distinction carefully. The taxes don't necessarily disappear. Instead, payment may be delayed until a future event occurs. That event might be the sale of the property. It might occur when ownership transfers, or it may happen under other circumstances defined by local law. Why would someone choose a deferral? Because cash flow matters. Imagine a retiree living in a fully paid off home. Monthly income is limited. Healthcare expenses are rising. Inflation has increased everyday costs. The homeowner may have substantial equity in the property, but limited cash available each month. In that situation, postponing property tax payments can create financial breathing room. Instead of paying taxes immediately, the obligation may be delayed. For some retirees, this can make the difference between staying comfortably in their homes and struggling financially. However, deferrals require careful consideration. Because delayed taxes usually don't vanish, they are often recovered later. That's why understanding the long-term implications is critical. A deferral can be a powerful financial tool, but it should be viewed as a strategic decision, not free money. Whenever homeowners consider a deferral program, they should understand exactly how repayment works. The goal is clarity, not surprises. Now that we've covered the 5 primary forms, let's discuss 3 bonus strategies that many homeowners never investigate. These opportunities can sometimes generate savings equal to or greater than the programs we've already discussed. The first involves disabled veteran exemptions. Across the country, many states and local governments provide significant property tax relief for qualifying disabled veterans. The details vary considerably. Some programs provide partial exemptions, others provide substantial reductions, and in certain cases, eligible veterans may receive extremely generous benefits. Unfortunately, awareness remains surprisingly low. Many veterans spend years paying higher taxes than necessary simply because nobody explained the programs available to them. If you or someone you know has military service-connected disabilities, researching local veteran property tax benefits is absolutely worthwhile. The second bonus strategy involves surviving spouses. This area is frequently overlooked. After the death of a spouse, many homeowners focus understandably on emotional and financial adjustments. Property tax benefits are rarely the first thing on their minds. Yet numerous jurisdictions provide special protections, exemptions, or continuation rights for surviving spouses. The requirements vary. Some programs require the homeowner to remain in the property. Others have age limitations. Some continue existing exemptions previously received by the deceased spouse. Because rules differ so widely, surviving spouses should never assume benefits automatically continue. Verification is essential. Now let's discuss the third bonus strategy, and this one may surprise you. Protesting your property assessment. Many homeowners believe assessments are always accurate. They assume local authorities have perfect information. Unfortunately, mistakes happen. Assessment systems process enormous amounts of data. Errors can occur. Property characteristics can be incorrect. Square footage records may be wrong. Condition estimates may be outdated. Comparable sales may not accurately reflect reality. And when assessments are inflated, property taxes often increase as a result. That's why many jurisdictions provide formal appeal processes. If you believe your property assessment is inaccurate, you may have the right to challenge it. Now, this doesn't mean every assessment is wrong, nor does it guarantee success. But many homeowners never even review their assessments carefully. They simply accept the number presented. Sometimes that's the correct decision. Sometimes it isn't. The key is understanding that an assessment is not necessarily beyond question. Reviewing assessment records can be one of the smartest financial checks a homeowner performs, especially after periods of rapid property value growth. At this point, you may be wondering something. If these programs exist, why don't more people use them? The answer is surprisingly simple. Most people assume someone else will tell them. They expect a letter, a notification, a phone call, some kind of official warning that savings are available. But property tax systems generally don't operate that way. Responsibility often falls on the homeowner. The county doesn't always know your full circumstances. They may not know your retirement status, They may not know your income level. They may not know you're eligible for specialized programs. And because they don't automatically enroll you. That's why proactive action matters. Not next year, not someday, not when taxes become unbearable. This month, because every year that passes without reviewing available programs may represent money unnecessarily leaving your retirement budget. So, what should you do right now? Start with a simple checklist. First, verify whether your property currently receives a homestead exemption. Second, determine whether your age qualifies you for additional senior benefits. Third, investigate whether an assessment freeze program exists in your jurisdiction. Fourth, research circuit breaker programs or income-based property tax credits. Fifth, learn whether property tax deferral options are available and appropriate for your situation. Sixth, review potential disabled veteran or surviving spouse benefits if applicable. And finally, examine your assessment carefully to determine whether an appeal may be justified. Notice something important. None of these steps require immediate payment. None require expensive consultants. Most begin with information gathering, a phone call, a website visit, a conversation with your local assessor's office, a review of county documents. Small actions today can potentially create meaningful savings for years, and that's really the bigger lesson here. Property taxes often feel unavoidable. Many homeowners assume the bill arrives and payment is their only option. But informed homeowners understand something different. The amount you owe is not determined solely by your property's value. It's also influenced by exemptions, credits, freezes, deferrals, and relief programs established by law. The challenge is that those benefits rarely help people who don't know they exist. So if there's one takeaway from today's discussion, let it be this. Never assume you're already receiving every benefit available. Verify it, check it, confirm it. Because the most expensive property tax mistake isn't filing the wrong form. It's never filing the right one. And for countless seniors across the country, that simple difference has meant paying hundreds, thousands, and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars more than necessary over the course of retirement. The good news, you now know where to start. And that single step may be worth far more than most homeowners realize.